Hi, my name is Cynthia Dillingham, and I'm a juror on the case of Deborah Robertson versus Dr. Black and the administrator for AU Hospital. I have not previously served on a case involving any issues for civil rights violations, and I have no previous knowledge of the defendant nor of the plaintiff in this claim. The plaintiff, Deborah Robertson, is suing AU hospitals, claiming that her right to privacy was violated when Dr. Black violated the HIPAA law by dispersing her PHI to law enforcers. The defendant in the case claims that there is not sufficient evidence to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the plaintiff's privacy was violated and that the evidence presented does not support the breach of a HIPAA violation. Both the plaintiff and the defendant presented great definitions for their cause of the HIPAA and the privacy rules. After several discussions amongst the jurors, I do not believe that Deborah Robertson had her privacy violated by Dr. Black and the AU administration. And I also asked my fellow jurors to dismiss her claim and the reward of $1 million for compensation of defamation of character. I agree with Mrs. Robertson in her reference from the Boston University of Medicine 2014 when it states that HIPAA recognizes certain entities called covered entities to use and disclose PHI transmitted paper, electronically, or oral patient information that has identified a datable that has to have authorization to do so. I also believe her, and I read that public health authorities must have permission to collect or receive information for the purpose of preventing or controlling disease, injury, disability, not limited only to public health surveillance, investigations, or to interventions. The Department of Human Health Services also defines covered entities as hospitals, clinics, physicians, healthcare providers, a public or private entity that can include a billing services, community health systems, any providers that furnishes bills for healthcare providers are recognized as covered entities under the Department of Human Health Services. It also states that it limits the release of information to the minimum reasonably needed for the purpose of disclosure of a person's health information. There are boundaries set for the use and release of health records to those entities. It holds violations and it holds them accountable for civil and criminal penalties if a patient's privacy was violated. Deborah Robinson states that according to a federal code, that Dr. Black was obligated to contact her to gain her approval prior to releasing her health information to the law enforcers. However, after reading through several pages of a report on the HIPAA privacy rule and the public guidance from the CDC and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, I read a paragraph, and this paragraph says that there are circumstances that permit PHI disclosures without authorizations, and it has a few exceptions and a few entities that are exempt from this. It says in situations where abuse, neglect, domestic violence, law enforcement, a covered entity may, under specific condition, disclose PHI with a court order or subpoena or other legal order to help identify, to locate a suspect, a fugitive, a missing person to provide information to relate it to a victim of a crime or a death that may have resulted from a crime. This paragraph tells me that there are exceptions when it comes to law enforcement. And also, in support of the defendant of the case, there wasn't a lot of evidence to say that they weren't investigating Mrs. Robertson for a crime or for missing persons or was a fugitive or that she was or may have been involved in a crime that resulted in a death. There just wasn't enough evidence. It just said it was a subpoena. This paragraph said there are certain permitted circumstances where authorization is not needed. And I think that in this situation, this was covered under that paragraph in the CDC presentation. So therefore, I stand by my judgment that Mrs. Deborah Robertson's civil rights were not violated with the privacy of her public health information. Thank you.